everyone, I'm Janine Gibbons here with Tracey Rogers. Thank you so much for driving all the way here to this interview.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, you are welcome. Thank you for being here. So tonight on a very special summer edition, as you can see we're outside, of And Lights Up, I'm going to be talking to Tracey, and she is originally from Philadelphia, graduated from Temple University, and then went on to go get her master's in international education, right? And now you work at Amethyst?
It's called Amethyst.
Okay.
Yes. It's a nonprofit, and its mission is bridging cultures between folks in the Middle East and people in the United States. So we do a lot of different programs. Our biggest one is probably our Fulbright exchange program. So we bring college students from the region here to the U.S. to go to college. We also have a lot of professional development programs as well. We have offices throughout all of the Middle Eastern region, really. And so we do a lot of projects in other countries in that region as well. And what I do specifically is I oversee a high school exchange program. So we bring kids from the region to the U.S. for a full academic year. They stay with the host family, they go to high school, and then they go home as global ambassadors is what we call them.
Wow.
So that is what I do.
That is amazing. Now, what high school do the students
They go all over.
Okay.
We actually just recruit the students, but we have partners here in the United States that actually place them, that actually identify the host families and the high schools. And our kids are placed all throughout the country, so they're not in one specific area.
Okay, well, cool. That is awesome to, do something like that for people in the Middle East, to give them that culture of over here and then to bring it back there.
That's our primary goal, is to be able to exchange cultures. And we actually just started an opposite program where we have Americans that go to the region as well. And they spend a whole year in other countries, going to high schools, staying in host families. So it's a great cultural exchange program. So
one more question about your job, and then we'll move on to astrology, because I'm anxious to get to that. But maybe if you could just tell our audience, your transition, because I think it's interesting that you moved to Washington, D.C., and just that whole, how you got, I guess, the job.
There. I've had several different transitions before I ended up in D.C. I graduated from Temple, and my bachelor's was in political science. And after I graduated, I just went on this campaign kick. I was living the campaign life, working for different candidates for a few years. So I first started as an intern with a state senator named Stuart Greenleaf here in Philadelphia. I don't know if he's still actually in office or running for anything, but that's where I started. When I graduated, I moved to Illinois, and I worked for a coordinated campaign with 3 different candidates. And then from there, I moved to New Hampshire, and I was there for a few months working for Joe Lieberman when he was running for president in 2004. And then from New Hampshire, I finally wound up in D.C. to work on a city council race. And I ended up staying there for, until now. So
after your campaign trail?
Right, after campaigning, I was offered a job at George Washington University. And I was mainly just doing admin work. And it was in their lobbying office, their government, international, and community relations office. But, there was an education component in everything that we did. And having worked on the campaign trail for so long, and then moving to D.C. where it's all about politics, I immediately got turned off very quickly as soon as I started working at GW. And, I was deciding, what I wanted to do my master's in. Did I want to do education, or did I want to focus on, international relations and politics? And long story short, I ended up doing the international education program. And then I finished my master's, I guess, in 2007. My focus during my program was Islamic education and Arab culture. And so then I got offered a job at Amethyst. And that's kind of where I am now.
Well, that's amazing for being, 28 years old,
29.
Right?
I'll be 30 next month.
Wow. But that's a lot. That's great. Well, congratulations on all of that.
Thank you.
So now, the topic that everybody's, at least I've been really waiting for, your other study and passion, astrology. How does that all fit into this? I know you said it was a separate thing.
Yeah, it doesn't fit.
Yeah.
It doesn't fit at all. I don't even know how it started. When I was younger, I was always curious in the planets and mainly the mythology behind the planets.
Right.
The Greek mythology, the Roman mythology, I remember getting books on Greek gods and reading up on the different gods and goddesses. And, I guess one day I started getting into, well, not one day, but I started getting into reading my horoscope. And I was always going to a site called Astrology.com, which is like the premier site on astrology. And I would read my horoscope, and then one day, I saw something, a link to read your horoscope for your moon sign. And I thought, huh?
Yeah.
Like, what's this? And then there was, a whole section on your Venus sign and your Mercury sign. And then I came to realize, you don't just have a sun sign. You have all of the planets in certain signs that were there when you were born. And that makes up your birth chart. And so then I started reading more, like, well, what does it mean to have this planet and this sign? And, that's when you start learning more about the mythology behind the planets. And so it went back to my curiosity when I was younger. And so it's just kind of expanded. And I feel like I'm learning something new every time I'm reading a book or, discovering a new astrologer, a new website, a new, addition to astrology itself. So it's just kind of been my thing for almost 10 years now.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So like around 18.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Well, cool. Well, one thing that I was really interested in when I read your first initial email was your philosophy on astrology. I think that's really good. I think it's a healthy one. So I kind of wanted to read a quote from you and ask you if you. I mean, it's a great quote, so I don't know if you need to elaborate on it, but and just if you want to, though, you can. Okay, so I enjoy learning about astrology because it provides insight into the future through forecasts and predictions, as well as the complexities of human nature. I find it fascinating that the study of planets can be so foretelling, and yet we never know how certain events will unfold, nor how we as individuals will react. My experiences in astrology, which I've done for almost a decade now, has been bittersweet, really, a blessing and a curse. Nevertheless, I find astrology to be a valuable tool to have on our side as we attempt to navigate life in the here and now. So I thought that was great. First of all, great writing. Great job. And then second of all, I really like what you said about how, you can predict something, but you just never really can because you don't know how life is going to unfold. So I don't know if you've had any experiences or like where you came to that philosophy.
Right. Well, it's interesting because, like I said, we each have our own individual birth chart.
Right.
And your birth chart is really like your astrological DNA. It's your DNA for the universe because no one has the same birth chart unless you're a twin.
Right.
And even then, it could be different. There could be signs or planets that are in different signs depending on the time.
Right.
So for me, I'm someone that always wants to know why.
Right.
I'm always asking these questions. Okay, if this is the truth, why? What makes it the truth? And for me, it's fascinating because, we all have these abilities to sense things. We have these gut feelings. We're able to intuit things. But, we don't know where it comes from or why it is or why we all of a sudden have this sense of energy, whatever the energy may be. And so for me, astrology kind of answers those questions, but at the same time you don't really get a full answer.
Right.
And I think it's ironic and kind of messed up at the same time, because there is this science here that can explain things about your personality based on your birth chart, but at the same time a lot of it is just having faith as well. And so, it's what makes me want to learn more so that I can not only expand my faith, but also explain everything else that's a mystery in life,
Right.
And yeah, that's pretty much what I meant by that quote. And that's why it's bittersweet because I can say, okay, this is what's happening in your chart, the planets in the here and now, these are the effects they're having on you, these are the influences they're having, but at the same time, I don't know how you respond to it.
Right.
You know, I don't know how events are going to unfold. And so it's bittersweet because, you know, it's great that I can tell you these things and forewarn you, but at the same time, I can't tell you exactly what's going to happen. And even if I could, I don't know how you're going to respond to it or how you're going to react to it. And I think a lot of people, you know, get that confused with astrology because, you know, you go to a tarot reader and they tell you specific things, or you go to a psychic and they tell you specific things. And that's why I think astrology has such a bad reputation in the sense that people think, oh, it's witchcraft, or you're predicting the future, you're doing this. And that's not the case at all. I mean, you really have to study. You have to know your planets. You have to know the mythology behind them. You have to know your signs. You have to know, you know, the constellations and the aspects. And all of that. There's a whole science that goes to it.
Exactly.
So hopefully that, you know, that's good elaboration on what I meant.
It is. It's interesting that, you know, it's always a matter of mixing the science with like that other aspect, whatever that aspect,
the feeling aspect, the sensing aspect that you can't explain, even though you've got the science there.
Exactly.
So
interesting. So and you said that that's kind of like a blessing and a curse. And is that because like you yourself have interpreted things that you don't want to know?
Yes, or you know, or not even that. I've you know, I have this blog and I write horoscopes, and I'll go back, you know, after a few weeks and read what I'd written for my own horoscope, and it's like, well, why didn't I follow my own advice? You know, it's like I knew this was coming. Why didn't I act on it? Why didn't I take advantage of what was happening? So that's what makes it a blessing and a curse, because it's like, you know these things, and either you don't want to know it, or you, even though you know it, it completely just goes over your head, and you're just kind of like, okay, like, why didn't I follow my own advice? So my own words.
Well, I guess it's hard to do though, because
it's hard. Well, like we're human. Yeah, exactly. We're human, and even though I can look at my birth chart, I can look at your birth chart. I can say, this is the type of person you are. These are your challenges. These are, you know, some of the benefits that you enjoy on the regular. As far as your day to day, I can't tell you that someone else isn't going to have an influence or put a mark on you in some way or fashion. You know, I can't tell you that, you know, something outside of you isn't going to somehow, I don't know, influence you in a negative way or in a positive way. You know, we're not, unfortunately, we have other people that we've got to interact with, and other things outside of ourselves that we have to contend with and deal with and face every day. So it's just, you can never get a straight answer.
That, you know, that reminds me a lot of Sex and the City, which I like talk about all the time on this show, which is really bad. But there was one episode where she was talking about fate, and she was saying, like, if you didn't fall in love, or if you didn't swerve off course, then, like, sometimes, like, in some people's opinion, that, like, kind of makes you who you are, because those things have an impact. So that is all really interesting. Well, I could talk about this forever. But moving on, if you could just briefly describe, you emailed this to me, the Saturn return.
Saturn return.
Yeah. Oh. So prevalent.
How old are you?
I'm 24. But I feel like the Saturn return is happening to me. So go ahead.
Well, where do I begin? First of all, my Saturn return, thankfully, was exact, and it's not over, but the pressure has lifted. But I was and I still am pretty obsessed with Saturn, the planet Saturn, and what it represents, simply because I started reading about my Saturn return long before it happened, and now that it's happening, I'm just kind of like, oh my god, I read all this already. So it's very, you know, it's so interesting to me, and I'm fascinated by it. But basically, your Saturn return happens when the planet returns to the sign it was in on the day you were born. So, for example, when is your birthday?
November 29th.
Okay, so you're a Sagittarius.
Yes, I am.
Okay, so the sun returns to that same sign every year, and that's when you celebrate your birthday.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same thing with all of the other planets in your birth chart, including Saturn. The only difference between Saturn and the sun is that it takes Saturn 29 years to come back to that sign, whereas it takes the sun only 1 year. Okay?
Yeah.
So basically, that's what it is. It's when Saturn comes back to that sign. It takes 29 years. That's one full orbit around the sun, and it spends about 2.5 to 3 years in each sign on its way to whatever sign you have yours in. And so basically what that means is it's people around the ages of 28 to 30 that undergo the Saturn return. Okay? And the Saturn return is really kind of like your rite of passage into adulthood.
Okay.
You know, people think that, you know, I'm an adult at 18 or I'm an adult at 21. No, it's really when you're almost 30.
Okay.
And if you take a look around you, I don't know if you have any friends that are almost 30, but, you know, it is a time of major transition. It's the I'm almost 30 crisis. And it's like a mini identity crisis because you're trying to figure out what you want to do with your life, you know, who do you want to be with, who do you want to be. You know, people get these amazing new jobs or start brand new careers around this time, or they lose their jobs. People get married, people have children. I mean, it's pretty major, and it usually happens between, you can start feeling the pressure of a Saturn return as early as 27. And then it can last to your early 30s. So basically, we all go through this at the age of 29, and you know, general themes basically include finding yourself, figuring out where you fit in the world, really setting a foundation for the rest of your life, finding that base, and you find that within you. And it's a very challenging time. I don't want to say that it's difficult. I mean, it really depends on the person, how hard it is. But it's a challenging time because in a sense, it's like, you know, you're shedding your old skin, which means, you know, you're losing friends, you're making new friends. You are moving from something familiar to something brand new. And so it can be tough and it can be depressing in the sense because you feel like, okay, where do I stand here? What do I do? You know, who am I? You know, you're all of a sudden isolated and you're on your own and you have to figure it out for yourself. And so that's what makes it such a tough transition. That's what makes it such a tough time. And again, it's the I'm almost 30 crisis. You know, everybody goes through it. What makes it even more interesting as far as, you know, the events that unfold is that even though everyone deals with those same general manifestations, it's really specific as well to where Saturn is placed in your chart. So you and I will both go through a Saturn return and both feel a sense of isolation and maybe a little depression and feel sad or feel ecstatic and good that we're figuring things out for ourselves and doing our own thing. But there are certain aspects of our return that will be different from each other, and that's based on sign placement. So, for example, I have Saturn in Libra, and basically the Saturn sign, whatever sign it's in, those things that the sign represents are those things that you will face the biggest challenges. If that makes sense. So
your responsibility, I think, is Sagittarius.
So Libra is a sign of relationships. It's a sign of partnership. It's a sign of, you know, and it's funny, I'm going to post a blog about this later tonight. I just finished one. But Libra is the sign of the other. It's about fairness and diplomacy and peace and harmony and let's all just get along. And so with Saturn there, you know, I face my biggest challenges in life when it comes to my interactions with close others, you know, relationships, things of that nature. Diplomacy, being fair, being nice, maybe being too nice, stuff like that. And so, but you, for example, okay, so you were born in 1986. Have you ever done your birth chart before?
No, I never have.
I'm trying to think of what your, well, we can totally do it after the interview. I'm trying to think of what your Saturn placement is. It may be Scorpio. It may be Scorpio. You'll be 25 this year. Okay, I'm not quite sure. So I'll say the description for Scorpio and Sagittarius. So Scorpio is a very intense sign. Scorpio is a water sign. Scorpio is all about, you know, mystery and secrecy and detective work. And Scorpio likes to be safe and secure. Doesn't like to share too much about himself or herself. You know, Scorpio is just a very deep sign. That saying, "Still waters run deep." That's Scorpio. And so basically, Saturn in the sign of Scorpio means that those will be some of the issues that you deal with as far as sharing with others, dealing with issues surrounding death and transformation, also dealing with, you know, how much of yourself you're willing to give to another person, and the other person could be anyone. It could be family, it could be work, things like that. Sagittarius now is a fire sign, and Sagittarius is all about, you know, fun and travel and spirituality and philosophy and, you know, big things. You know, Sagittarius is ruled by the planet Jupiter, which is about expansion and luck and good times. So to have Saturn in the sign of Sagittarius basically means that, you know, you would face difficulties surrounding those things that Sagittarius represents. So it's different. It's different depending on your Saturn placement. We all still go through those general themes, but you know, specific events that unfold really are, you know, dependent upon where the Saturn placement is.
That is very fascinating.
Yeah, it's pretty, like I said, I've been obsessed with Saturn. I go around saying Saturn's my homie because, you know, Saturn is not a fun planet to deal with. And in astrology, it's got a pretty bad reputation. You know, the mythology behind the god Saturn, or Kronos, is that, you know, he ate his children. He was king. He was this big, you know, god king. Right. And he didn't want anyone to take over his throne, meaning his kids. So he ate them so that they couldn't take over his throne.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's, you know, exactly. Saturn is no joke. Saturn is also a karmic planet. So, you know, it has a lot to do with karma and paying old debts as well. So, you know, a lot of people hear Saturn, think of the Saturn return, and it's like, oh, I don't want to deal with it. But if you don't deal with it, if you don't incorporate your inner Saturn and make it a part of you like every other planet in your birth chart, then it makes the whole experience that much more challenging. Yeah. So that's basically the lesson of any Saturn return, is to, you know, deal with what comes your way, make sure that you're being honest and truthful with yourself, and ridding yourself of anything or any person that is no longer serving your purpose. And that's hard. It's hard.
Very hard, but it's very necessary. Good. Exactly. It's very necessary.
It's necessary.
Yeah, well that was really cool. I think that hit on like a lot of stuff on transitions that I don't know if we always cover, because we talk so much about, you know, our career, but like relationships and like characteristics of who you are. I mean, they make that happen. So,
and for me, you know, it's funny because, like I said, I started reading up on Saturn's return long before it came to me. Right. But even still, I was no way prepared. You know, I didn't know how things were going to unfold for me. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know how I would react to it. Right. And it really is this time where you get to know yourself so much more. And that kind of is the reason for the isolation from others, because you're just so in yourself and realizing the type of person you are. Yeah. And it's freeing in a sense, and it makes it easier for you to live your life on your terms. Yes. You know, which is such a freeing thing. It really is. And a lot of people, it's funny because, you know, I remember when I first started talking about Saturn return, and I had friends, you know, who were at this age when I first started obsessing over Saturn, and I would tell them these same things, and they are all over 30, and they look back and they say, you know, you were right, and they know that I'm going through it as well, and so they're like bearing with me, thank God. But it's nice to be able to identify what's happening. You know, it's no fun going through this and not knowing what's going on and feeling like your life's just been kind of, you know, completely shifted and it's chaos and you don't know what's happening. So for me, it was great to be able to identify and say, oh, now I get it. And I would imagine it would be the same way for others.
Yeah, most definitely. I think it's good to know what you're dealing with so that you can. Well, that was very, very fascinating. Oh, sorry. So I have two more questions for you.
Okay.
Since I am, you know, the arts and entertainment contributor, I try to put a spin on it. And for all the actors or singers, well, specifically actors for this one, but I printed out 2 audition notices, and I have the dates of the auditions. One is for Blythe Spirit, which actually a good friend of mine was just telling me about. It sounds really cool. And I have this one for a movie that's going to be filmed in Philadelphia, or they're casting it in Philadelphia.
Okay.
They're filming it there. So there's 3 dates, Sunday, July 31st, and Monday, August 1st, for this audition for Blythe Spirit. And then there's this one is on Wednesday, July 6th.
Okay.
So I don't know how you would do that, but do you know, just like out of those dates, which one would be the best if I were to audition?
Well, the first thing I noticed when I saw these 2 dates is that they fall under the sign of Leo. And Leo is the acting sign. A lot of our most famous celebrities are Leos. Madonna's a Leo, Sean Penn's a Leo, Jennifer Lopez is a Leo, Ben Affleck is a Leo. So we have a lot of Leo actors, and if their sun signs aren't Leo, they have other planets in the sign of Leo.
Okay.
So I would definitely choose these 2 dates because not only will the sun be in Leo, but most likely the planet Venus will also be in Leo, and the planet Mars will also be in Leo, at least by this August date here. Okay. So, like I said, Leo is the acting sign. Leo is full of energy. Leo is, ruled by the sun, likes to be the center of attention. And I just, because these auditions fall under the sign of Leo, I would go for these.
Okay,
for these
either
2
one?
dates. Either one.
Awesome.
And maybe, like I said, you may have a 3rd planet by August.
Okay.
It's only a day after, so either one I think would be good.
Yeah.
This one, July, this particular date doesn't stand out to me most, mainly because it's in the sign of Cancer, and Cancer is kind of a retrieving sign. Cancer is not the most outgoing or extroverted kind of sign, so I would definitely stick to these 2.
Awesome. Well, that's good because I actually wanted to try.
Good. It was funny because I was like, oh, which one does she prefer?
No,
I hope I picked the one she likes.
Yeah. So thank you.
You're welcome.
So thank you. Well, that was a great A&E spin. And it's just so interesting how you can just know those things and helps you make a decision. Yeah. It's good for indecisive people like me.
Absolutely.
All right, so my last kind of question, well, all right, I lied. 2 more questions still, because I'm Janine. But, so, all right, this is for all the non-believers. How do you sway people? Because I know you said that, oh, that's fun, so you have a good attitude about it, or...
Well, it's funny because all of the people that I speak to about astrology, I wouldn't say that they've been non-believers. Right. I don't think I've run into a non-believer in the sense that I've never had to debate, astrology with anybody. I do have a really good friend who I met a long time ago, a few years ago, when we were both working at George Washington University, and I used to talk to her about astrology, and she used to look at me like I had 3 heads, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
But I started talking about Saturn return, and she's a Pisces, and at the time she was dating someone who was a Scorpio, which water signs, they're both water signs, they go well together. So I would give her advice about him, and my boyfriend at the time, he was an Aries, and so we're both fire signs, and I would tell her about him, but it was really the Saturn return. She's a year older than me, so when it started happening, I would let her know, okay, this is what's going on with you right now.
Okay.
And I did her chart, and I just started telling her these things, and they started coming true for her. So I guess I try to keep a positive attitude just because I know. I mean, even as far as doing this for a living, even I'm skeptical because as much as I enjoy astrology, it is not the most common profession.
No.
So I can understand when people are like, what is she talking about?
Right.
But, at least I try to make it fun. And I guess when I start talking about the sun sign and describing things about the sun sign, and they're like, yeah, that's me, that's when it gets to be, that's when I start to sway them. So
yeah, because it's true, because, even what you said about Sagittarius, I'm like, oh my gosh, well, that does sound like me. That's so interesting. Well, cool. All right, so last question.
Okay.
Let me see what it was. So for people our ages, 22 to 32, is our main demographic. How can we incorporate astrology into our lives in a healthy way?
In a healthy way.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying in a healthy way, because a lot of people read their horoscope, their daily horoscope, and think that's that.
Right.
And the thing is, I always tell people we're never just our sun sign.
Yeah.
Horoscopes speak to the sun sign. So if you're reading your horoscope for Sagittarius, you and about 500,000 other people are reading their horoscope for Sagittarius. So I would suggest getting a birth chart done and having a reading done. It's not something that you have to do all the time. Your birth chart never changes.
Okay.
And so I would highly suggest paying someone money, a good amount of money, which we're talking maybe anywhere between $75 to $100, and letting them do your chart and give you a reading. Because, you know, a good astrologer will alert you to certain things about yourself, good and bad. And not only that, but you have your chart to take with you, and you can go back to that reading and see how events have kind of shifted for you, see how they've unfolded. And the beauty about having your birth chart done once is that, you know, you don't have to do it again. It doesn't change. And so if you want other readings, like a compatibility reading where you compare two charts, you know, or, you know, some kind of reading on your career and where that path may be going, or a reading on your love life or anything, you have your chart. You just take your chart back to your astrologer and say, can I have a reading on this? And it's never as expensive as actually getting the birth chart done. And the first one is usually the most expensive. After that, it's not. So I would, as far as doing this in a healthy way, I would advise people to go and have their readings done.
Wow.
At least once.
Well, that's good. That's good advice. I like that. So one other question that I had to ask you, that is kind of timely, is that new sign that I cannot pronounce, begins with an O, that was brought about. Is that real or not?
No, it's not. And hopefully, unfortunately, I'm not very good at explaining this, but there are two different hemispheres that practice two different types of astrology. You know, you have your Eastern astrology, which is Vedic, and you'll find that in India and China, Chinese horoscopes. And then you have Western astrology. Western astrologers basically look at the constellations and the stars, which represent each zodiac sign from the Earth, and so there are 12. But, you know, during the Babylonians, there were 13 signs, but we're not Babylonian. So any Western astrologer that you run into follows Western practices as far as astrology goes, and there are 12. So your sign hasn't changed.
Thank you so much
for
coming all the way out here.
Of course.
This environment where squirrels are actually throwing stuff at us. But, and thanks for being on Transition.
Thank you for having me.
Tracey Rogers, everyone. You can. Do you want to say where they can find your?
Sure. You can check out my blog. It's Randomness of Rudy at blogspot.com. Or I lied. randomnessofrudy.blogspot.com. Sorry, but it'll be on the site.
Yes, it'll be on Transitions.
Yes.
Of course.
So yeah.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Thank you.